NZ Aerosports, Icarus Canopies, now Gyro. That's right, we've rebranded, and Gyro is our next generation. It honours our founder, as that's the name we knew him by, but Gyro also marks the start of a new chapter. And not to be biased, but it's going to be fucking epic. Long story short, we're more us than ever, so if you're new to the sport, or even a Sky God Ninja Turtle, welcome. I think our valiant leader Lucy, Gyro's daughter, says it best.
And we still got that fuck yeah attitude. Rebrand! Woo!
Rebrand woo indeed, Lucy. Anyway, head over to gyro.com for more info and get amongst you legends.
I was 19, broke, unemployed, and sold my girlfriend's canopy for drug money. So I thought I better sew her a new one. What a sentence, and what a story. This describes the humble yet outrageous beginnings of NZ Aerosports, the home of Icarus Canopies, in the words of our founder himself. From getting a paratrooper toy from his mom, watching parachutes at the DZ as a 6-year-old, jumping off the wharf with a parachute made from bed sheets, doing his first jump at 16, sewing his first canopy on a borrowed machine at 19, and starting to sell parachutes out of a garage in 1986, Paul Gyro Martin had an undying love for the sky. Our company started with one man with the wildest of spirits and a true blue sky dream, a renegade. In the time that Gyro created and ran the Icarus Canopies brand until he passed away in 2017, he pushed everything he had to its limits. We miss him, and we always will. Gyro is the next generation of NZ Aerosports. It honors our founder, of course, because it was the name we all knew him by, but Gyro the rebrand also marks the start of a new chapter, our next jump. Gyro is the space between sound and silence, art and science, chaos and calm. Gyro is a state of epic tranquility that transcends understanding. That moment, in the door, in free fall, mid-swoop, where nothing but the present exists. A perfect balance of euphoria and thrill. Gyro captures our passion for flying and our commitment to designing break-the-fucking-rules canopies that deliver pilots pure, wild flight. Hey gang, so I got a new book out. It's called The Upside of Fear, and it's exactly what you think it's about. It's about the good side of, well, getting scared. In it, we talk not only about the science and biology behind fear, but the psychology as well. And it's not just coming from me, it's coming from some of the best in the sport. Omar Alhigelan, Jeff Provenzano, Maxine Tate, and so many more have contributed their sometimes terrifying stories to the book to help you overcome your fear. So head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com. You're going to find the link to the book there, as well as the other books. It's available in ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook right now.
Coming straight from the cockpit, it's another episode of Lunatic Fringe with the fucking pilot.
Ready, set, go! Back in the can for another edition of the Lunatic Fringe podcast, and I've been leaning on my friend Cola from Blue Skies to give me a bunch of really cool people to talk to. And once again, who the fuck are you, and what do you do?
What's up, Dean? I am Mike Brewer, and I am a bit of a jack of all trades, do a little bit of everything. For the last few years, most of the work side of skydiving for me has been military contracting, filmmaking, and just general coaching and organizing. Yeah, aside from that, I like to do a lot of base jumping and speed flying, get out in the mountains, and kind of just try to find novel ways to have a good time.
Sure.
Come up with stunts and projects and silly things like that.
It's amazing to me that the further on in the sport we get, the more and more people I see able to do stuff like military contracts, which of course can be not only a lot of fun, I'm sure, but quite lucrative. But it's a business that I never would have necessarily thought mixed well when I started jumping 28 years ago. I was not the kind of guy the military was going to come to learn shit. You know.
Yeah, I would have thought the same thing, especially like, the 19-year-old version of Mike when I started jumping. But the longer I've been in that field, the more I understand. Like a lot of the high level military guys are very similar to a lot of the high level skydiving guys. Like we kind of enjoy similar types of activities, and it's why we ended up and kind of the same mindset in some ways as well. Obviously, differences too, but it's sort of why we all kind of ended up in the higher tier versions of where we like to operate. And yeah, I find it's usually really, really enjoyable to work with those guys, and it's part of it not as just like the money side or the the cool stuff you get to do at work side, but it's also just like it's usually a really good crew. They're a really fun
Sure.
time to be around.
Well, and by the time that I would imagine that they get there and they're reaching a level where they're training with you through the military, they've already jumped through a whole lot of hoops. So they've proven themselves in multiple areas before they're getting to you.
Oh yeah, man, they're professional learners. It's like the nicest coaching that I've ever done. There's no babysitting. They're there because they're extremely good at learning and applying information. And yeah, they're really they're focused, they're invested. So it's always been super, super good working with those guys.
And you're out in South Carolina?
Right now, I'm in North Carolina. I'm at my teammate's house currently. I have an MFS team here with Tom Baker and Trey Burner, and we're doing some training for this 2 week period. But in general, in life, I just a week ago actually moved to Salt Lake City.
Oh, okay. So you bounce around quite a bit.
Yeah, that's pretty much the normal default setting for me is on the move. I haven't had an address really in the last like 8 months until last week, and even before that, I didn't really have a place that I called home since maybe like the beginning of 2022.
Wow.
So it's been a lot of travel and just a lot of logistics, but I'm happy
Sure.
to finally be settling into a place that I can call home and have a bed and four walls and a roof. So
I
it's pretty
bet,
nice.
man. So now you
Yeah.
you mentioned the 19-year-old you. That's when you started skydiving?
Yep.
How'd that come about?
Um, I started jumping. Let's see. My original thought to get into skydiving was when I was 16 years old, and I was dating this girl, and we had chatted about going for a jump. I found out you had to be 18, so I was like, I'm gonna get a fake ID so that I can go skydiving, right? Not so I can buy booze or whatever. I wanted to go skydiving. So I was pretty stoked on the idea. I thought it'd be a good time, and I think that's pretty telling of like kind of who I was as a kid. But ultimately, I did not get a fake ID. I wound up doing my freshman year of college at the Citadel, the military school. And kind of in that period, like I grew up surfing and skateboarding and all that. So I wasn't really feeling like myself all the time. I was having a great time at the Citadel, to be honest. It was a really fun, challenging experience when I was there. But like there was a big part of me that was missing, and kind of in that process, that same girl was coming back through town and she was like, "Hey, do you want to go for a skydive?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds, just right. Sounds like what the doctor ordered." So I went and made a jump. I didn't know at the time that there was a difference between, static line or a tandem or, all the different ways you could get into it. So they just kind of told us over the phone, they're like, "Well, you can pay this much and you can go with someone strapped to you, or you can pay like what ended up being like $30 or $40 more. Then you got to take like a 4.5 hour course or whatever, and then you can jump by yourself." And I was like, well, I'm only ever going to do this once in my life. I might as well jump by myself. I had no idea what the difference was. I wouldn't recommend doing static line over a tandem if you've never skydived before, for sure. Like the tandem was probably like a way better experience, but it worked. It was fortunate for me. I did that jump. I kind of learned all the things about kind of, how I was working. Still wasn't really imagining myself as a jumper ever in the future. But the guy who taught my first jump course had a 5 minute conversation with me on a picnic table after my first jump, just talking about how as you progress in skydiving, you can really like learn to fly, and like every part of your body becomes like an aileron on an airplane, or like like a wingtip like birds have. Like you can build up that speed, you can go anywhere super efficiently. Like you can be 100 feet over here and above and end up like 20 feet over here and below in the snap of a finger. And I was just like, wow, that's sounds pretty cool. And then they're like, yeah, it's only like $60 if you want to go jump again because it was static line. So I was like, yeah, I reckon I'll do that. So I went and did another jump that day, and then came back the next weekend, made four more jumps, and that's all she wrote.
So now you said you were a surfer, so and you said you were kind of not feeling yourself. Was it? I've heard many surfers say that when they can't surf, they're just kind of lost. I mean, was that how it was for you?
Yeah, I think there was just like a part of me that really loved being in a flow state environment. I think definitely at that point in my life, there's kind of like the gears were always turning in my head. And if I could get into some type of action sports environment where I was like, had to be in tune with what was going on, it was just like really good. Like it let me just kind of exist instead of, being super critical or thinking or analytical and everything. So, yeah, just sitting around in a military school, walking in step with everybody else was, like not really the version of myself that I identified with at that time, and being able to put myself back in a flow state environment and challenge myself in this like unique way, kind of like put me back in the mind state that I wanted to be in.
Nice. Now, what was the plan when you went to military school? Like, what were you going to be when you grew up?
All right, so my best friend's dad, he's kind of like a mentor for me. Um, at the time, he had gone to the Citadel and then become a lawyer, in the Marine Corps, and kind of like had a cool career, had a good life, had a really good family. Like I really looked up to him, and I was at a point where I had a scholarship to run. I was a track athlete, and I could do that at the Citadel, and kind of didn't really have a lot of other plans at the time. Just kind of had been focused on running and surfing and existing, which is not a lot of careers come out of that usually. So I uh, I just was like, I'll just do what he did because it looks like it worked out great for him, And so I signed a letter of intent to go to the Citadel, and then actually sometime along like the summer of my uh, after my senior year in high school, a kid that I grew up surfing with, wasn't like super close with him, but he died in a car crash, and it kind of was one of those wake up moments that was like, wow, like I don't know if I really want to be like signing away this, next 4 years of my life. Like I wasn't opposed still to going into the military at that point. I just was like, I don't know if I want to do the military while I'm in college and then do the military. Like I could just go to a regular school, but having already signed that letter of intent to run at the Citadel basically would have canceled my eligibility with the NCAA, and I didn't want to do that either. So I basically was like, I'm gonna go. I'll ride out the first year at that school. I'll run for them, get my times, like just basically keep progressing in track, and then get permission to switch schools, and that's what I did.
Now, did obviously skydiving happening during this time, did it completely derail everything that you were thinking then, or was it like the answer you'd been looking for?
I think it was kind of the answer I've been looking for. Yeah, I think I was looking for a way to have a like a good life and a career that wouldn't kind of require me to stop living like the fun and novel experiences and creativity that I was, that you kind of get when you're in high school because you can just do whatever you want and you're kind of in
Sure.
like you're in like the loading screen of life, as
Right.
it were. So I think it kind of like just pointed me in a good direction. It showed me I don't know if I thought right away that it was I basically, yeah, I did actually. I made my first couple jumps. I got my A license. I saw that you could be a tandem videographer as a career, and I was like, "Whoa, dude! If you can do that, you have made it." Like that's the dream right there. And I at the same time I went to Carolina Fest when I had 19 jumps
Oh, wow.
because yeah, it was awesome, like really big events, and I kind of saw what skydiving could be, on the culture side and the community. I was like, wow, man, like this is not just a thing that like, I mean, it is totally a thing that a lot of weird people do, but it's not only a thing that a lot of weird people do. It's something that a lot of weird people do together.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty cool, and yeah, from there, just kind of targeted. I just oriented myself in that direction. I really loved film and photography at a young age too. I was like running around with my dad's Canon AE1, like a 1970s film camera,
I
and
remember that camera.
I would go smashing through rolls of film and developing them in the darkroom and whatnot. And so I kind of like translated that love into skydiving as well. I was like, I'll be like a tandem videographer, the
Okay, it's
peak of
so awesome.
but yeah, photography.
Now, what did the
Um,
family think of this? Because obviously, when you're running NCAA, you're now in a military academy, and all of a sudden you're an A licensed skydiver that thinks shooting videos for tandems is cool.
yeah, they were weirdly supportive. Um, something I didn't really know about my dad when I was that age, because like you know how it is when you're like a teenager, your parents are just the lamest people on earth. And I found out later, like my dad is actually a pretty cool guy. Like he used to ride motorcycles and like was like an ice climber and like boxed when he was in college and just like sprinter. Like he's a super athletic, super like go getter type person. And he kind of slowed down a lot when me and my brother were born, just to like stay alive.
Sure.
But yeah, very considerate of him. But so he was like super supportive, and I think my mom had a lot of nerves about it, but she was kind of just doing the momly like, oh, if you're happy, I'm happy. So
It's wild when you figure out that your parents are not necessarily just the people that raised you, but that they actually had lives before you were around, and some of them were kind of wild.
yeah, I mean that's a bit of a paradigm shift I think that everybody goes through when they're growing up, right? Or at least hopefully, because like
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Well, and it happens at all kinds of different ages too. I mean, I don't think, especially with my mom, I didn't really know who she was until I was probably in my 30s, and it was the first time I watched her completely lose her shit in traffic, and everything she was doing is what I do, and I'm like, I thought I got the prick side of me from dad, but it's fucking you. And it was the most wonderful thing. I'm like, I thought I taught you how to curse, but you clearly knew how to do this. Like,
you've known a thing or two for a long time for
yeah,
sure.
it's fun.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the like so I kind of like took off really hard into the skydiving thing. Like I finished college and whatnot, but like I after that I took off super hard into skydiving and I basically was going home like 2 days a year for most of a decade. Like I didn't see my parents very much during that period. I was very focused and it's been one of the cool kind of rediscoveries of the last like 4 or 5 years. I moved to Europe in 2020 to continue pursuing base jumping and speed flying, and kind of making that big move across the ocean was like, wow, I really got to like put in some effort to see these people now, and vice versa. Like it came from both sides. Like now I live across an ocean, so we're gonna have to put in some effort, and that was one of the cool byproducts of that was I'm like continually still, I'm 31 now, just continually uh, rediscovering my parents and like watching how my conceptions of them have evolved. Just like it never stops. That's
Sure.
pretty.
I'm
It's
I'm
pretty
kind
cool.
of I mean, I'm kind of the same way too. I mean, shit, I'm 54 and I've lived outside the United States for mainland anyway for 14 years now and you do have to put in the extra effort. And thankfully, beside travel, there's Zoom is amazing and all the different ways that you can keep in touch, but it forces you to actually engage whereas on a day-to-day basis if they're just there all the time, it's hey, how's your day? So it's kind of
Yeah,
neat when you have to be real people with each other.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's been cool.
Now,
Really.
have
Well,
either of them jumped?
my dad did a tandem with the Golden Knights. Um, did you just do a spit take?
Yeah, man. What a cool fucking first jump.
Yeah, that's it. He did a tandem with the Golden Knights. So here's a funny little backstory: is I when I was a kid, one of the probably frictions between me and my dad was the fact that he was a civil engineer and he got a contract doing military housing in Fayetteville, North Carolina, around Fort Bragg or Fort Liberty now, I guess.
Hmm,
Um, but anyway, he was gone like 5 days a week doing that, and I kind of definitely held a grudge. I was like a 13-year-old or something.
sure.
Um, and I was like, I'm never gonna go live there. But part of we stayed living in South Carolina. But yeah. as part of that time there, he went and did a tandem with the Golden Knights because he was working on base. And fast forward, I got my first like big skydiving job, really working at the wind tunnel in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I was like, oh, we've come full circle now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. When were you at the tunnel?
I started flying there in 2014. I became a tunnel member. So I don't know if like people know this, but Paraclete has a membership program where you basically pay like a flat rate per month and you get like basically insanely discounted tunnel time. Like you just pay X amount of dollars per month and you can fly 30 minutes a week or 10 minutes a day. I don't know if they still do the 10-minute one anymore, but anyway, like you fly a lot. So I was like, oh, I want to get really good at this thing. So I'm gonna go, live in a tent and pay my monthly rent to the wind tunnel and go train a lot at the wind tunnel. So that's what I was doing. I was like living in a tent behind the school
Uh,
at Paraclete, and I would commute to college in the morning in Wilmington, North Carolina. So it was like a 2-hour drive. I'd come back. I'd fly in the wind tunnel. I'd steal the wind tunnel's Wi-Fi to do my homework. I'd take a shower at like in the school, like eat breakfast at PK's or whatever, and then go back to the like that would just be like my daily routine. And I did that for about a year. Started a competitive team there, and then became a tunnel instructor at some point in 2015.
So I don't know if I would have been there maybe just before your time or right around that time, but I came out and almost killed myself in that tunnel with Selwyn Facey, who's an old friend of
Oh
mine.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
he took me in there, and you know Selwyn. Selwyn's quite the character anyway. But I'm not great in the tunnel. I certainly wasn't back then. But he just has a lot more faith in people than they probably deserve. And he had me. I was flying on my back or something, and he motioned for me to do one thing, and I did the exact opposite, and just
Oh,
up and at an angle at full speed, and everybody just shocked because I almost killed myself in that fucking tunnel.
yeah, you're not the only one that
Yeah.
yeah, I mean Selwyn's a legend. Like he's one of my favorite people on earth and a super good uh like rough around the edges in some ways, but a super good mind as far as like how to approach coaching and flying. I think that, his resume shows.
Oh yeah.
So
I
yeah.
I worked with him in 2004 and 2005 at Skydive Cross Keys, and you can't unremember the first time you met Selwyn Facey. And
Yeah, man.
he's actually promised me he's gonna come on the show sometime in the future, so I won't tell any Selwyn stories because I know he'll tell them all. The boy is he embraces everything he's ever done, which is amazing.
Yep. Not
But
shy.
Oh no, not even a little bit. But yeah, I'll never forget. He walked away, and I after our first meeting, and I was dizzy. I'm like, holy shit, who or what was that? That was amazing. And to
Really good way
this,
to describe it.
oh yeah, and to this day, I mean, I hadn't talked to him in probably actually in a bunch of years, and that's a funny story too. But randomly out of the blue we started talking again and had what was supposed to be a 5 minute chat that turned into like a 4.5 hour conversation, and it was just I mean, it's classic Selwyn. It was
Yeah.
fantastic. It took me an hour to get used to hearing the accent again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
so yeah, I mean that's the Selwyn experience too. Like it's never a drag. You're not getting sucked, dragged through this conversation, but you will intend to have a 10-minute, 15-minute chat with them and wind up down the rabbit hole 2.5 hours later, just solving all the world's problems. But it's fun. Like
oh
it's
yeah.
good, it's entertaining. He's basically, like a walking stand-up comedian in a way, like super funny and he's actually started doing some stand-up shows lately. That's kind of one of the things he's dabbling in. I'll let him tell you all about it
Oh,
whenever you get him on the
amazing.
show. But yeah, he's an interesting guy. So he was the he was the head instructor still and kind of like general leader and father figure of the whole wind tunnel team at the
Sure.
time when I was indoctrinated into the whole Paraclete clan. And he was the one that asked me if I wanted a job there, and then just beat me up for a couple weeks during FITP with Dalton. And that's that was how it all started, I think, for me.
That's
Not how it started, but kind of like where a lot of the progress came from that
sure,
period.
sure, where you stepped up to the next level, so to speak.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
where did the love of and then the progression into filmmaking come in for you?
Well, like I said, I kind of really enjoyed doing it already. As a kid, I don't know. Like I said, my dad handed me a film camera, and I don't know. It's kind of like in the in the digital age, listening to a record player. It's kind of like, wow, this is something I can actually like hold and touch and like physically do these things. And I just kind of nerded out about the process. When I fast forward, I was did a brief stint working at a drop zone in Myrtle Beach that doesn't exist anymore. And there's a girl there who's in art college down the street, and she brought me into the dark room and just let me like she would bring me in. I didn't go to the school there anymore, but I would just like go into the dark room and just like spend hours in there developing photos and printing them and just kind of like using all the old analog techniques. So I just thought the whole thing was super cool, and it turns out it gave me a decent background for the basics of how cameras work and how to think about shooting, not just kind of like the digital like spray and pray and then figure it out later.
Sure.
And excuse me, I think I'm about to sneeze. If it happens, it happens. But yeah, it was cool. So moving forward from that, I guess I saw that film and video were on one side, could be, a profitable way to live off of skydiving. It was kind of more fun. Like I liked progressing my body flight personally and parachute flying. So I didn't really feel like tandems were going to be the thing for me.
Sure.
I did like teaching, and I've done a lot of teaching obviously in my skydiving career, but yeah, I think like just kind of getting to do the video thing was like a really nice concept for me at the time. So I poured some energy into that. And then on the other side, like on the more artistic side, I started doing kind of little like for fun videos or event videos or just silly stories or whatever, because I just liked having the opportunity to share those memories with people.
Mm.
And actually, I've started to value that even more in my life. Like you just kind of like those experiences. Memory is fickle, like those experiences do kind of disappear. And I can't tell you how many times I've looked back at an old video that I made, or like someone shares like a Summerfest video from like
Oh yeah.
5 years ago or something. And you're just like, yeah, it's a video. I don't really like watching my old videos that much, but every once in a while I see like, moments in it that I completely forgot happened, and then it brings back a whole bunch of other moments. And I just think that's valuable. So I like being able to share that, do that for the people that I care about and for the industry that I care about.
Oh yeah. I mean, as you say all that, it's kind of funny because I'm sitting here in the studio and on the shelf in front of me, I got 78 high eight tapes and about 140 mini DVs that I've not been able to watch in probably close to 20 years. And I've kept good care of them, so I'm sure the footage is still on there, but I finally started getting the itch because I know this is this is my fucking life on this tape in front of me for so many years and so many memories that I guarantee I've forgotten or warped. And I can't wait because I've been actively trying to find equipment that I can use to get all of this digitized at a reasonable price because I can't wait to see all the stupid shit I got up to 20 years ago.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I hope you'll follow up with me whenever you do get those processed. I'd love to hear your impression of it. That's super cool.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, the very first, and I have my very first tape. The very first video I ever shot was a four-way over Paris Valley with less than 30 jumps and a borrowed camera helmet with a guy by the name of Kevin Love, Juliana C, the four-way superstar, Gary Spear, who owned the first flyaway tunnel in Vegas, and fucking Lou Sanborn.
Wow.
That's the first
Nice.
video I ever shot. So, I mean, I got some fun memories that I want to go back through someday that, hopefully I can manage to get it done.
Yeah, those are going to be valuable too, like, just for the history of the sport. So it's
So, with the type of filmmaking stuff you've done, I mean, outside obviously all the normal shoot and tandem videos and all that kind of stuff, what kind of projects have you taken on?
well, I've done a number of kind of like either advertisements or short documentaries, both inside and outside of skydiving. And probably the biggest thing I did in the recent period was the Project 19 documentary.
Nice.
So if anyone's listening and doesn't know what Project 19 is, it was a world record attempt, all female world record attempt, trying to build a 100-way vertical women's world record around the 100th anniversary, or to commemorate the 100th anniversary for the passing of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote in the United States. And it's a it was a super cool event. I didn't know a lot about it getting into it, but actually there's a lot of substance behind it, and the way in which they conducted the record was super cool and kind of worth learning from in some ways. And I thought the event was a huge success, even though they didn't eventually get the 100 way. They were super close. They had like 96 out of 97 5 times on the
Yeah.
last day. It was ridiculous. Like I've never seen a record come so close so many times in a row. And it really speaks to the teamwork that they were able to keep pulling that off without anybody having like a mental explosion and it just being like a 40-way for a jump, because that's what usually happens.
Right.
We almost got it, and then the next jump they're like, we're gonna get it for sure, and somebody just red lines, and all of a sudden it's a yeah, disaster. um but anyway, yeah, so I was out there documenting that process, and kind of got asked if I could think of making it into like more of a 30-minute either film festival or like kind of like a 30-minute TV spot length documentary. So I took that on and kind of like wove in the story of the actual fight for suffrage, like from the inception of the United States, essentially in 1776 to obviously beforehand, but you know what I mean, like that was
Sure.
Declaration of Independence all the way up to 1920 when they or 1919, 1920. Please edit that part out where I didn't know what year. I just spent a year working on that documentary. Um, yeah, it was 1920 that they eventually passed the 19th Amendment, and that was like a big milestone in securing the right to vote. It actually, there were still some problems that we had to keep
Sure.
evolving through for decades and decades after, and kind of still have to fight
Yeah,
for
it's
today.
still are.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, like short story made extremely long. It was a really fun project, and I got to learn a lot of history, and I got to help out a group of women that I really care about. I think it's a super cool group of women out there who
Sure.
crushed it at the record, and I think uh, found a cool way to use skydiving as a useful vehicle, and not just the selfish endeavor to fall out of planes, but actually to draw. I mean, it's a super attractive sport. Like visually, it's very engaging. So anything that you have like that, you can use to engage a wider audience. And then the idea is we're going to kind of entertain
Sure.
them and then trick them into learning some history.
Sure.
And
Well, I mean, from a documentarian's perspective, skydiving is an incredible vehicle, not just for skydiving itself, but for all the stories that lead into the sport. Because that's the reason I've been able to do more than 300 episodes, because there are no two stories that are alike in skydiving. There's a lot of similarities, obviously, but everybody's got a story, and some of them are incredible stories.
yeah, for sure.
Do you find
I mean,
that your experience between working on that type of stuff in the sport and your background with photography, that's aiming you towards projects outside of skydiving as well?
um, yeah, I think skydiving's basically allowed me to put myself through film school in a way. So
Sure.
like I made all the mistakes, not all the mistakes. I'm sure I still have more mistakes to make, but
You
I
do.
made many mistakes along the way um, that you'd kind of want to get out of the way before doing professional work for big clients, and it's kind of more forgiven in skydiving because the average level that's expected in skydiving and photography is quite low.
Sure.
Um, and so by pushing myself past that and just using that time period to learn, it's really set me up to have a launch platform essentially to keep progressing outside of just the skydiving industry. So I've been doing
Sure.
some of that. It's been really nice, and yeah, it's fun.
I
What
uh I
projects
I
to do?
I mean I started jumping quite a few years ago, 28 years ago, almost 29 years ago now. And I remember watching guys like Craig O'Brien, who were incredibly well known in the sport, but skydiving was just skydiving. Nobody outside of the sport really paid attention to what was going on, except for the random TV commercial here and there, if that. And then cut to a whole bunch of years later, I find myself flying a special project in Dubai for Tom Cruise in the Mission Impossible movie, and here comes Craig side by side with Tom and doing all this amazing shit. And it just dawned on me, man, this was such an obscure thing in what I consider to be recent history, and now fucking Craig, holy shit, and it was just a real eye-opening experience. I mean, I knew it was getting there, but I was kind of blown away.
Yeah. Well, that's something that I think I observed maybe in like 2017 or 18 when I started to get a little bit more serious about the video side. Part of it was because I started to feel a bit of a glass ceiling in skydiving, like if you continue to do it the conventional way and that's the only thing you do, like it's actually pretty hard to get around that. And so I started to try to think creatively, like how can I bring this more mainstream? How can I kind of move around this invisible barrier that sort of seems to limit a lot of people in skydiving? Because like in some cases, the best you can do is become a world champion for no money and a 20-cent gold medal, and like
Right, right.
spend $1 million trying to do that. So uh, film became one of those things. Like, all right, I need to be able to relate to industries that are outside of skydiving in order to move around that glass ceiling. How do you relate to an industry that's outside of skydiving? You have to bring it to them, and the only way to do that is, visually. Um, or one of the only ways to do that is visually. So that was the one that was accessible to me, and so I poured a lot of energy into that, and I think it's been cool and useful. It's given some good opportunities. So
Well, and I'd imagine too that as you're maturing and progressing with that side of your journey in the sport, the platforms that you now have to get your stuff out there are so varied and so accessible that you've got opportunities that you never would have had 15 or 20 years ago, because you've got so many different ways to get it out there, whether it be YouTube or any different app that you can get things out on. I mean, I'm assuming you put those to work for you.
yeah, absolutely true. That's kind of one of the more interesting things about the way that skydiving has changed too, is like and the filmmaking side, everything really. A lot of it's just gone to Instagram and TikTok. Like it's very rare that it's almost inefficient to make skydiving movies that are in 16:9, the way that people would be looking at this video right now. It's
Right.
almost always, you know, optimized for Instagram, and the all the schemes that you would, use to like keep attention, for like a short attention span type app. Like it really sort of like directs everything in a certain direction. And so that kind of coincides with project ideas too. If you're trying to come up with a cool project, like,
It would
yeah,
have
I don't know.
to. I mean,
Yeah.
it's funny because we went from televisions getting bigger and bigger and bigger until they practically took up your whole fucking wall. And now I find myself more often than not with a massive TV on my wall, but I'm paying attention to the little box that's in my hand.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I
Who
haven't even owned a television since 2000, yeah, 2020.
bizarre. I
Like,
mean, I
yeah.
never would have seen it going this direction, and I love the fact that it's gone that way. I've had a endless amount of entertainment in watching technology progress, especially within the sport. But I never would have called it going this direction. No way.
Yeah, and one of the cool things about that is, if we're having that glass ceiling conversation, I think actually Instagram and, whatever the winning social media platform of the week is, it just it really opened the door for people to do things more independently. So, like previously you would have had to sell yourself on your resume. You might have to have like some really high quality film examples, like a show reel. And I think those things are both still pretty important in some realms, but at the same time, people are making a living, um, whether it's directly from their audience engagement on Instagram, or if that's just a part of how they sell themselves. Like you can just be a person that does a good job on social media, um, has the skills to back it up, hopefully, and ends up getting some more opportunities that you wouldn't have gotten before. And you see it all the time now.
Sure.
So,
Do you
I
find
mean,
though that I think there's a random quality to it as well that's got to be kind of annoying for somebody like you that does it professionally? Because I mean, I remember putting out a goofy video and me doing a hop and pop where I just tumble out of the airplane, and from the camera's perspective, I just disappear into the water. And that got a couple 100,000 views. But someone that put together an incredible video that's well produced and has everything going has like 28 views, and it seems to be so random. I mean, it's got to be annoying sometimes when you put something out there that you're like, this fucking kicks ass, and it doesn't go anywhere.
yeah, I mean, it's just a learning experience every time, right? I think I think it's less random than we think it is. I think there's some kind of basic principles that hold true. Like people do enjoy the really high quality stuff, but I do find that sometimes what you're talking about, like something that feels more grassroots and kind of
Sure.
like lets people ask a question like, did he just die? Did he just go into the
Yep.
water? Like what just happened? And it gets shared around like crazy and whatever. And so then it really just turns into a question of like, what do you want your brand to be? Like, do you want to be representing yourself as that person who's like posting these kind of clickbait, sketchy videos, or are you gonna try to keep a cleaner brand and like I want to post things and like hope people engage in the more organic way.
Sure.
And I've kind of gone with the second direction. I don't like to post like carnage or anything,
No,
not because I'm
no.
trying to hide it, but because like it's just not I'm not trying to leverage bad representation for my sport in order to get more views, right? Like that's something that is seen a lot. It's probably worth talking about actually. That
Sure.
when you post carnage clips purely for the sake of getting views with like no educational value, you're making the sport look very amateuristic and you're hurting certain types of access for things like the public impression of base jumping and speed flying and skydiving to an extent as well affects the access that we have. So there's a reason that base jumping is illegal in the United States, and it's because of the impression that people have of us. And
Sure.
in other countries, like having spent a ton of time in Switzerland, in the last 3 years, 4 years, um, pretty much like, yeah, there's still some negative impressions of base jumping because it is pretty gnarly. Like people die and then people have to deal with the consequences, or people come over and make terrible decisions in mountain environments because they're not mountaineers. Yeah, like the sport has a lot of growing up to do. But at the same time, like we're mostly viewed as athletes. Like
Sure.
people get that it's a logical outlet, not logical, but like a valid outlet is what I meant to say.
Sure.
Something that like they're just much more open to that idea. And if we could stop posting carnage videos to try to get millions of views and start posting educational videos so people understand what's going on. I mean, that's like a pipe dream, maybe, to think that we would use social media that way, but we could
You
get a
know what?
step in the right direction and
I
have a
can't
legal.
I came to that opinion actually a whole bunch of years ago when I was still pretty new in skydiving, and in the late 90s and early 2000s you spent a lot of time defending your decision to go out and be a professional skydiver because it was viewed as so much more hardcore than it is these days. Now, speaking of projects like that, do you have any big things coming up? Anything in line that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, not a ton of stuff that I really want to like get too in depth about just yet. But uh, definitely working toward keeping some of those projects in the works. I like combining sports. So I like trying to take, like whether it's like a tunnel flying background or skydiving background, base jumping, speed flying, rock climbing, those things, and see how I can meld those activities together. I like so many different things that it's nice to be able to combine them. So right now, the ones that are easy to talk about is like I'm just competing this year. Like MFS is finally going to be held at Worlds. So
Nice.
I'm going to be competing in Worlds at MFS this year, and along with speed skydiving, which I never thought I would be doing, but it's kind of fun. So here we
You're going
are.
for speed skydiving, huh?
Yeah, yeah. I actually went for speed skydiving in Russia in 2000. What year would that have been? 21. Um, Basically, the short version is my home drop zone in 2019 hosted Worlds, or sorry, Nationals at Paraclete, and I didn't have a teammate at the time. I just wrapped up with tunnel freestyle, and that was kind of the thing all my energy had been pushed towards. So I was like, what can I compete in that doesn't require any teammate or any trading? And it was speed skydiving. Like I can get out and I can put my head down and I can go really fast. And I ended up qualifying for the world team, and then we ended up going to Russia and then getting a silver medal. So that was like pretty wild experience. So since then, I've just been like, well, that was kind of a good time, and like might as well go do it again. So here we are.
So
Um,
competition, I'm assuming you must quite enjoy it then.
I do. I think anything that pushes you to train in a dedicated fashion helps make you the best version of yourself in the sport, and I kind of that's something I'm always striving for. So with uh and just having competitive goals, basically, I think just yeah, pushes you to new levels. So even if it's just kind of for fun, whatever.
For sure. Now, have you got any tips for, say, newer jumpers that are out there listening and camera and video and storytelling along the lines of what you're doing is what they're thinking of? What should they be thinking of in this modern day world? Where do they want to lean towards training? What is it they want to be learning how to do?
I'd say just like start by being authentic, to yourself and to everyone else, but like mainly to yourself. Like if you want to if something's drawing you in a direction, follow that. Like if you really love flying four-way belly, fly four-way belly. If you really love VFS, do that. If you love freestyle, like push in that direction. It doesn't have to be that organized right away. Like I never knew that I wanted to be a freestyler at any point in my career really beforehand. I kind of just knew that I really loved being able to do anything. Like I wanted to be able to fly in any different way. And then I started to get more creative with it. And then I was like, maybe I'll take this to a competition, and then kind of went from there. So you can kind of like this is gonna sound so Disney, but like let your heart guide you. um, I think it's useful. And then on the side of the video, it's just like look for opportunities and make sure you're prepared for them. Like if you love doing it, you're gonna do it well. Skydiving, like the general uh, education level, specifically on videos, pretty achievable for anybody with YouTube.
Mm,
So do some research, ask questions, and then just make sure you're trying to take those chances in a safe way. Like if don't lie to anybody if you're not prepared for something. But if you think you've got the physical skills to pull it off and you're just a little nervous, just go do it. I think imposter syndrome is probably one of the more crippling things in the skydiving industry and probably just in general. And the only way to get over that is to stop being an imposter and just go do it.
yeah.
As
Yeah.
long as you're doing it in a safe way. So
It's a very real thing, man. I'll tell you what, I stopped flying full time just about a year ago, and I remember after the last load I dropped and shut down the airplane, I went, I can't believe I got away with it for this long.
that's funny.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's something I mean like there's never been a point in my skydiving career that I haven't felt imposter syndrome because it's a natural feeling when you're pushing yourself past your present limits. Like um
I
every
think
single every
some of
single like
it's
the last
some of it's
go on.
good though, right? I mean, having it to some degree keeps you honest, right? If you start buying into your own hype, that's more dangerous, I would think.
Yeah, I think that's super dangerous. The whole Dunning-Kruger effect. We
Yeah.
don't have to break that whole thing down right now, but actually, sure. Like basically, it's a theory that the less experienced you are, because of the knowledge that you're lacking, the more experienced you think you are.
Yeah.
So somebody with zero jumps obviously knows that they're lacking a lot of knowledge, so they're pretty risk averse. But you get to about 200 jumps, you're like, man, I've done this 200 times. Maybe I've done this for a year or two. Like probably like pretty good at this by now, and you don't realize that you don't know anything. Like you are a super novice, and then you probably get to around 2,000 jumps and you're like, wow, it's like you said, I can't believe I got away with it for this long, like now I'm starting to adopt a different mentality. And that actually changes, that matters as you change sports as well. So like being a super experienced skydiver getting into base jumping or speed flying, I think you're more susceptible to the Dunning-Kruger effect for having already been an expert somewhere else. You feel like you got away with it.
Yep.
But yeah, you gotta put yourself back in that humble mindset again. And you can definitely get hurt from that. I've done it.
Yep.
And yeah, so I think having a little bit of imposter syndrome might be an indirect indicator that you are at least assessing yourself in a
Right.
thoughtful way.
Yep.
So not doing that in a negative way is important, like don't just talk yourself out of everything, but also it is important to be constantly self-assessing in sports where your life is at risk and where you are the main, keystone of you being safe or not.
Yeah, for sure. Now, do you still shoot 35 millimeter?
I still have the camera laying around. I haven't had an address in a while, so no darkroom, but I do have an undeveloped roll of film as like incentive to maybe get back into it. I've been pretty focused on training and kind of pushing forward with these new goals for a long time now, so I haven't really had a lot of time to just go dive
Sure.
into the darkroom, but yeah, maybe sometime in the near future, who knows.
Oh, you still got those muscles there to flex. You just have to warm them up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, anybody listening right now, they're wanting to follow along with everything that you've got going on, maybe keep an eye out for future projects that you might have coming up, or even just keep up with your competition stuff. How do people find you out there on social media?
The easiest way would be on Instagram, Mike with 3 underscores Brewer. Yeah, the first 3 underscores were taken. And yeah, that's probably the easiest way. Or look out for anything that Momentum Flight is doing. I've been working with them for a long time. They're a cool team that's promoting a lot of innovative canopy flying techniques, particularly in groups with high performance parachutes. Or keep an eye out for Paraclete XP, for Kinetic XP is the name of our team. So you can see how we perform this year. And yeah, but you can find all those pretty much through my Instagram. So Mike 3 underscores Brewer.
Mike 3 underscores Brewer. It was a pleasure, man. I told you beforehand, I go to Cola to get recommendations when I want a good conversation. And she's like, get this guy. so I cannot thank you enough for taking time out and sitting in the room with me and telling me some stories. And I look forward to hearing how the upcoming competitions go and the semi-secretive projects that you didn't tell us about.
Thanks, Dean. It was really nice meeting and getting to chat with you as well. And I hope anybody listening enjoyed our rambling.
Absolutely, man. Take care.
Yeah, thanks. See ya.
Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Lunatic Fringe podcast brought to you as always by, well, wait, not as always, actually. Brought to you now by Gyro. Formerly known as NZ Aerosports, you'll head to gyro.com for their next level line of canopies. By Pussfoot, the Extreme Sports Collective. Head over to pussfoot.com to check it out. By Summit Parachute Systems, check out summitparachutesystems.com to talk to Jarrett Martin and the gang about kick-ass pilot rigs, rigging courses, and more. By Flyaway Indoor Skydiving, go to flyawaytn.com and check out all the cutting-edge stuff to come. By Pure Spectrum CBD, head to purespectrumcbd.com to check out their wide range of CBD products. And as for us, head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com to listen to any of the hundreds of episodes currently available, hit the link for our YouTube channel, pick up your copy of the Lunatic Fringe book or The Accidental Stripper, and get a sneak peek at upcoming guests. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.